Hello and happy Monday. It's May 30th, Memorial Day. Hope you're spending time with your family, celebrating, reflecting, whatever it is that you wanted to do today. If you didn't get to take the day off, thanks for working. We are back. This is chapter 13. We only have 2 weeks left. This is the second to the last chapter. We're going to be talking about America's Queen is the title of this chapter. We're going to have a little bit of a conversation that we may or may not have any business having a conversation about, but we're going to dive in because this is what we do. I wanted to remind everyone that it is, just like always, what month we're celebrating Heritage this month, Asian American and Pacific Islander AAPI Heritage Month. There are probably a lot of activities happening this month. There's only a couple days left. If you are interested in finding out more information about this community, about what's happening in your city, in your schools, look it up. Also, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Just a reminder, again, we're last couple of days, 36 hours out. And given everything that's been happening over the last couple of weeks, especially this last weekend, it's really important to take care of yourselves and each other and not focus on maybe all the negative things that people stigma that is surrounding mental health, and remembering that we can still help each other, get help ourselves, have positive, productive conversations around this topic. And even though it only comes up every May, this is obviously an issue for a lot of people throughout the year. So just a reminder. Given that, I want to remind everybody again that on Instagram, I'm still figuring out my own mental health issues, and I'm sharing. Sometimes it's very scary and embarrassing, but I want to share anyway what my thoughts are, what my experiences have been. Quick update, my medication has been changed. So I think it's fun and interesting. I follow a lot of very amazing content creators, some doctors, some mental health professionals having that conversation. And I just thought it would be cool to add to that. And then I'm going to bring up the store, but I want to bring the guests in first because I want to talk a little bit with them about the next thing that I'm going to share. So let's welcome, what was I calling you? The OG? Thank you for being here every week, Richard. It's
Hi.
Great support. Hi, for the broadcast and for this Epic Jedi project that we've been doing. And then today we have first timer Raquel Lopez.
Hi, everyone.
Music playing in the background. Thank you, Raquel, for joining us. Definitely Bakersfield College in the house today being represented. So I don't know how deep.
I don't know.
How deep can this conversation go? We will see. Okay, so what I wanted to bring up is the store. A couple of times people have asked me. I wore a shirt recently that's from the store that I designed as a fundraiser for Feisty Fellowships, which is the nonprofit that I started that partners with Epic Consulting on doing projects. The first one we're launching next week is for health and wellness, and I'm really excited about it. But although that particular program is funded locally by some philanthropy, there's always a need for fundraising. So I built this store to see, if we can get a few dollars off of some cool shirts that we design and mugs and things like that. So I'm going to pull up this. I haven't created the new designs, but I wanted to share this because one of the things that I'm going to add is coming from the Instagram messages, the posts that I've been sharing there. So I wanted to talk about it just a little bit. So this is the store. Nothing's changed since the last time. It's called This Is Epic. So the website's pretty easy to remember, bonfire.com, and then you look for This Is Epic. Still avec fromage because we love cheese. So everything with cheese. And then the No More Fucks mug that people love. I've sold several of these. And then the shirt. So this is the tank top that I was wearing in one of the Instagram posts that I did. So this is just for fun. And if it helps fundraise, then yes. So the next one that I'm going to do, if you're following, shouldn't be a surprise, but it'll be kind of fun to put the next one out. It's going to be kind of like a catchphrase from all of the posts that I've been putting on Instagram. So if you've been reading them, then you probably know what it's going to be. But I'll post that and then I'll share next week what the actual design is. Okay. Any questions or comments before we get started?
Nope.
All right. Okay. So the title of chapter 13 is called America's Queen. And we are in the Midwest. And we are learning about the drag community. This is about drag queens. This is about a couple of specific drag queens. We're going to have a discussion about the impact on that community and the intersection between that community and being undocumented and being Latinx in America and in the Midwest. Okay, so that's, I mean, it's obviously we could have a longer discussion than just the time we're going to spend here. And this chapter only covers a couple of people's experiences, but it's really important. And I feel like I learned a lot. Okay. So the first sort of quote that I wanted to pull out that Paola Ramos highlights and says a couple of times is this idea that through drag, a queen can do anything. And she mentions Dorian Corey, who is in the film Paris is Burning, that I think I've seen. I think maybe I remember if I had seen, so maybe I haven't seen it. About the New York City ballroom, 1990s. I want to say competition, but that's not accurate. Hang on a second. Okay. So through drag, a queen can do anything. This is like the sort of that kind of if you're wearing a mask, maybe if you don't know what a drag queen is, if for some reason you're lost on what I'm talking about, please just Google it. You may have heard of RuPaul. It's that same sort of thing, and RuPaul does come up in this chapter. So just based on this, through drag, a queen can do anything. What are some of your initial reactions when you read that and started kind of learning what she was going to be talking about in this chapter?
I think you know, when you started reading into it, also it really puts out a point when she said that, you know, when you go and do a walk and do a protest, if you're just a regular person standing with a sign, you're not going to bring attention to yourself.
Right.
But yet when you have this big old wig, your makeup done, your 4-inch stilettos, you're going to bring attention to your, you know, to that sign, whether you want it or not, whether it's a sign or the person holding it. Like how much power that whole makeup does for that person, you know,
Right.
whether it's you know, a costume, like you said, a wig, the stilettos, the clothes, that just brings attention to what you're trying to get out there. And sometimes I think it kind of even gives you a way of escaping or empowering yourself when you're, I don't want to say not being yourself, but really opening up to who you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end, like that's what Aldo was doing when he was, you know, putting his drag queen, that's his real personality coming out, the empowerment he had.
Mm-hmm.
So like I think that's what they were doing with the drag queens, you know, when they get into this lifestyle, their cost, their wigs, their makeup, it's who they really want to be. And it empowers them to be out there and then become somebody that maybe in real life with their own self they wouldn't do, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So as you keep reading it, you know, how a queen can do anything, but yet even in this community that you would think, like they said, you would find them being more understanding,
Mm-hmm.
There are still limitations. Like there's still that part that's not being accepted in the Midwest.
Right.
You know, they point out in Arizona, it was more, he felt the support. He got to where he wanted to be, although in his, he was being accepted by the communities over here closer to the border, to our Hispanic community. But yet you go more into the Midwest, and you hardly find any Hispanic people over there, and you stand out.
Mm-hmm.
That brown skin stands out, and regardless of the makeup or whatever it is, his Hispanic, culture comes out, and you can't avoid that. You can't
Yeah, then
avoid.
you're standing out in more than one way, right?
Yeah, more than one way. In a good way, which
Right.
he's a drag queen and a beautiful person that stands out with blue eyes, and uh, but yet you're also being seen in this. When he was talking about that opening day in the hotel, of just pure, um, sorry, my background.
They want to participate.
Yeah, with all the people participating, there's basically, they would look around, and they would see a lot of, white people, and very minimal, um, minorities
Mm-hmm.
participating in that drag show, or the drag queen,
The pageant.
pageant that he went to compete in. But the majority of them were white. Everything they even talk about that state being Trump supporters, and how he was going to be taken in as a participant by the judges.
Right.
So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's this initial like sort of empowerment that comes with the drag, and then you realize that there are all these other obstacles that don't go away just because you have the makeup and the wig and the costumes on. So it can be difficult. You want to feel empowered with these messages, and then you realize it's not necessarily true. Richard, did you want to add something?
No, I just, my statement, I'm glad Raquel went first because she clarified more. I was 180 degrees out on my thoughts on this statement because yesterday, do you remember we were talking about masking and how
Mm-hmm.
we cover things up, and that's where my thoughts were, you know, it, you know, being going into drag, is that a form of masking that allows you to do things you normally wouldn't do? That's what I was thinking, but Raquel actually inverted that and said, and helped me understand that the true self comes out. And so it is, even though you would think it was masking, or you could possibly think it was masking, that it's not. It's allowing the true self to come out. And so I appreciate that.
Okay. I sort of going along those same lines, this quote from Dorian Corey, in a ballroom, you can be anything you want. And so I didn't pull up any images or anything from the film, but this ballroom scene is, this sort of epic thing that where they compete to see, who has the best costume, who has the best idea, depending on the theme of the year. And you can be anything you want in that space. So it's in addition to the initial, maybe wig, makeup, and initial choice of clothing. But then when you're following the theme, then you can be even grander and bigger than that, and you're competing against, other queens during that sort of competition. But then what Paola Ramos points out, and this is where we kind of get that intersectionality, right, is that you can be anything you want, but then there's that added caveat, unless you're undocumented.
Yes.
Because we kind of learn about Otto and his journey, and then realizing that, and we're going to talk about this later, but this idea that they're, in some ways, they're not closeted anymore because they can move forward and be drag queens and all this stuff, but then within that community, they are still sort of in this closeted space because they can't talk about their immigration status. So it's like adding insult to injury, or I don't know, that's just like we were saying, additional obstacles. I wanted to ask, especially since you're both working in higher education, does this relate? Do you find this relevant in your workspace at all? Do you see, are there students who want to have these conversations? Are there organizations in the area that put on these shows or want to put on these shows? Is there any connection at all to your higher ed institution before we move on? No? Is that the short answer? Is no?
I have not. Yeah, I've not experienced. I've not experienced anything in higher education when it comes to wearing drag and any issues there. I've not seen it come up, but I think it would be great to have a competition, but I've not experienced it.
Well, what I'm sort of leaning towards is, because there are clubs on campus, yes, like Gay Straight Alliance or other. So,
yeah.
And so there are also organizations in the area. So I just wondered if that was, if the college itself is a space where people go to, because I mean, I always think of places like that as, having space, or, theaters or big ballroom kinds of places where something like this could happen. So I don't know if that, I mean, COVID kind of screws things up for a lot of people. So I might be asking this without any ability for people to even get together. I just wonder if it's like something that organizations look at and think about. Can we collaborate? Can we partner with a higher institution? It's just a thought. And if not, then maybe you guys can work on that.
I think you really, I think, opened up an idea, Letty, where I think if McCrow remembers, we were really, I think, blessed in a way, I would say, because during our transition to when we moved over there to the Timmins campus, we had one of our students that, I don't know if McCrow remembers, Trina. And, she dressed fully with her wig and as a girl. And the first thing she applied to be my student worker. And I didn't really know how we were going to have an acceptance in a small community, a small campus, having transgender, student wearing, because she really, she stood out. She's like a 6-foot person. You could see, it was kind of hard not to see Trina. But she wore beautiful makeup and beautiful clothing, very professional. And she applied to be my student worker, and I hired her. But I was more worried about her, maybe students not respecting her or saying something. I was more worried about putting her out there in a way where maybe she could get hurt. But I was actually wrong, that our community and our students were very respectful, because I had her as our reception area there. If a student needed something, they made a copy, they had to go get it from her. There was no way getting out of seeing Trina. They needed a Scantron, they would go to Trina. So it really, in a way, empowered her, because she really opened up and grew. And she ended up transferring to the main campus and joining the SGA
student government,
when she finished her classes here. So she was with us for at least 2 years. But I think we were the beginning of her being empowered and knowing and learning that, the higher, the students, adult students, were respecting her. And you saw her blossom every day as the weeks went on, the months went on. I really enjoyed seeing that from her. And then she was also part of she was very involved in a club, because I kind of followed her on CSUB when she transferred as well over there. So in a way, I felt very blessed to be part of that. I was a little bit cautious at the beginning because I didn't know how our students were going to take it. But on the contrary, everybody was very accepting to Trina. And I think we all in the community empowered her to be comfortable in herself. That regardless if she wore her wig and her dress, her makeup, we were accepting her the way she was. The students never, I talked to her. They were always very respectful, our teachers. And then that just made her blossom and grow up, move forward. And she actually also just, I think during the pandemic, she finished her bachelor's. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it was in psychology. Last time I saw her, she was actually doing a part-time job in McDonald's. She's like, oh my God, I just finished and I'm trying to find a job. But I'm like, Trina, what are you doing over here? And she's like, it's so hard finding a job right now. I just finished, with CSUB. So to see that, when you first, they went through your campus and you were part of that beginning, start. So I was very blessed, and McCrow also had my back when we did that, and I think it was a whole team effort there of empowering that student, and I think that's how it begins. Even when we could make a difference with one student and not being afraid of giving them a chance and making sure that she's protected in a way, because I would follow with her and check up with her to make sure that she was doing fine and that the students were being respectful and treating her well, and just part of growth. And
so thank you for sharing that, because I do remember that student was there, because I think it makes a difference to, well, obviously it made a difference to her, but it makes a difference to other students who are also dealing, right? It just takes one, who's the first one, and then what kind of support system is available, and then how can that support system then empower additional students. I want to say, because I think it's important now to mention, that the three of us do not have this experience ourselves personally. We are speaking solely through what was written in this chapter, and then some personal experiences. That's why I asked about students in the college. What kind of program or work or participation or support that's being provided at that level. And your example is from a few years ago, but that doesn't mean that it didn't have an impact on other students now. And you won't really know, because the last couple of years you didn't really see students on campus. So maybe at Cal State Bakersfield, she was able to have an impact and have that same sort of support in other places. Now, I wanted to mention that and move on to the next title card, because this banner, I should say, this was a description of how Otto, what was his last name? Sorry, I forgot. Arevalo. When she's describing him and how he feels, or what his experience was, is that he's not hiding. He's going to live as loudly as possible in every possible space that he walks in. And so that's sort of like, I rewrote it just kind of to be like any space that you walk in. And a lot of us have that privilege to walk into any space and be whoever we are or whoever we want to be in that moment. And that is a privilege. And so for him to say, this is who I'm going to be, even though it's frightening that I am undocumented and I don't know what could happen to me, right? So there's this other kind of empowerment, like I'm in a place where I have to be myself, and I'm gonna continue to promote who I am and what I am and what I believe in and my value system, even though there's this additional obstacle that might be in my way. This is just the message for this particular person, but I think it applies across the board with everybody. Okay. So there's, again, RuPaul's Drag Race, I think, has made it more mainstream and easier for people to kind of watch from afar and be entertained. And this idea that shows were for entertainment, but initially they are to challenge biases, right? There's a reason why Stonewall happened. There's a reason why riots happen. There's a reason why trans women are in danger all the time. All the things that we talked about over the last couple of weeks. Also, they're more at risk for violence and things like that. So yes, it's like entertainment, and now there's a show dedicated to that, and it's very popular. But there's also in that same sense where they're saying that being undocumented is this other obstacle. The conversation starts in that chapter by saying that allegedly, and she's very clear, allegedly, because she didn't follow up, that if you're undocumented, you can't compete. And so it's just another space where now you're not allowed. You're not allowed in this space because of your status, even though you could be an amazing drag queen, but you're not allowed in that space. So when you think about this, when you think about the entertainment value of drag shows and what that means when you go to a performance or you see it on TV, the idea that that's not like, maybe we're more used to it now, and I don't know, my like maybe older generation or like even my parents, that would be something that might give them pause. So what are some of these biases that are being challenged, and how are we overcoming them? What did you kind of think when you see this sort of banner, this sort of statement? What does that kind of elicit in you?
I think, like you say, it really, I think it has opened up the avenue for them to really get the exposure out there. Even for older generations or for people that are not accustomed to seeing it, as normal, because there's people now that not just the drag queen show is entertainment. People actually now live that lifestyle, like where before there's been I like to sometimes watch Netflix, and there's been documentaries of people doing it behind doors. They would do it only in their rooms, and they would have like a relationship, a marriage, but they still like to dress up and and still hide because they were afraid of being criticized or not accepted. So that, I think, opens up the door for them to be more out there. And I don't want to say normalized, because what is normal nowadays? What do we consider? I've sometimes talked to my kids, my children, even George, which is my 17-year-old. Like, what is normal nowadays? There's no such thing as normal. Because we can really pinpoint something that now we could accept as normal. Everything, I think we have to be open-minded. And there's no such definition for normalcy of a person. And I think the drag queen show, like you said, John Paul's show really opened up the opportunity for them to be out there and accepted more. But and then when the law passed that now they could get married in many states, but still, like you said, but there's still there's still that for our dreamers, our immigrant people, they're not being accepted into this community that you would think they understand the feeling of not being accepted. They would be the most understanding group.
Yeah.
But they're not, so I found it interesting as I read the chapter that I would have thought it would have gone a different way. The chapter I expected a different ending to the chapter. I didn't expect the ending of the chapter, but then reality hits you in the face and say, and it's reality. It's the elections, it's what we live through, it's our what we see nowadays, that we're living a lot of prejudice, a lot of injustice, a lot of minorities being pointed out, especially right now with so much immigration people, so many people coming. And I'm not even going to jump to the other chapter because, but um, but it's, I think in a way it really helped them, the community,
Yeah.
my point of view.
And obviously, the more that the rest of us are exposed to it, the more, accommodating we can become, because there's like that unknown, right? Like, well, we don't know what it is, or who they are, or, why are they doing that? It's like, why do any of us do anything?
Or even talking to our own children about it, our own parents, in a way, not too long ago, we had gone to Vegas and we ended up going to one of those shows. And it was really interesting because it was my first time as well seeing them, seeing a show for the drag queen, which was really, really good. It was like, oh my God, I was like, my jaw dropped to see how good they were, singing, the lip singing, and, the way they did their makeup, their body. But you should have seen my husband's reaction to it as well. He's Hispanic, Mexican, born in Mexico, Zacatecas. I'm putting them out in there. But his face, and then when they would approach him, like, oh my God, he would like, would get all red, and you could see his, like, he didn't know how to react to it. And I'm like, Jorge, put some money, give him some money. But he totally froze, literally not knowing how to react. When you're put into a position that you didn't expect, because it was kind of like a surprise of we went in a group of couples, and somebody had planned everything for us, so he didn't even know what to expect when we went in there into that club. And I didn't even know what to expect either. But, for me, it was really entertaining. But then to see that that kind of Jorge was attracting several of them, it was interesting. But his reaction was, just not knowing what to do, and putting him in that situation. But also, being, once you get to learn about that community, also talking about it. Being able to talk about it openly with your spouse, with your children, so it allows you to do that.
Yes. So this comment around the original intent of drag culture. So it's as much a transformation of themselves, that than of those around them. So in that situation, they're like intentionally putting people into that space, saying, no, you're going to come with me on this journey. You're here. I'm look like this, and I'm acting like this, and I'm performing like this, and you are participating now. I'm engaging with you, and you're in it. And so it's like you're saying about, we're transformed also because, now we have this experience. Now we have seen, the performances and the beauty and the work that goes into that. And I have a whole different appreciation for what it means, to put on a show like that, to perform in a show like that. So as long as the people who are having that experience are then willing to talk about it and share, and without judgment, I think that's the other part of it, is the without judgment part. Richard, did you have something to add?
Sorry. No, I just think it to me, the one part of this, how do you say Ado's stage name?
Sicaria?
Is it Sicara? Sicaria?
Sicaria? Yeah, you don't have to try to say it with a Spanish accent. Say
That's
Sicaria.
right. Okay,
Thank
got it. But I think I think that the more and more as I'm reading through these, I start to understand the complexities of the intersection of these of different groups that we talk about. And this one, though, it's like what Kel said. I really had this expectation of winning first place, and that's what's going to happen. It's going to be a good news story. and was the only individual that got that standing ovation.
Right.
You know, and then suddenly it's like not even in the top 10.
Right.
And it's like, and then and with the you know, tasteless humor that was surrounding it about you know, I don't know that it was ICE, but they were talking about people being in the room, to
Border
you
Patrol.
know, Border Patrol being in the room, and all these different things, and then you're like, it just doesn't freaking end. It doesn't end, and it's painful. And I just, you know, you want to reach out as you're reading the book and say, you know, let me help you. And sorry about my internet connection.
I'm sorry. Because we're having these conversations and you are voluntarily here, I'm going to call you out a little bit, because what you just said is very much that white savior mentality. So you're not. So I'm saying I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry, because I'm going to plow forward. The
Yeah, I
idea
know.
that we're supportive of the community, and we do, you know, what we can when we can. But those feelings of this idea that you're somehow like gonna go in and make things better, we all have to be careful of that, because, you know, Raquel's sharing that experience of this student who, um, no one necessarily said, you know, let me hold your hand and guide you through this process. It was just like, you know what, you're going to be at the front desk, and we're going to keep an eye out. But I don't think that it was ever like, I'm going to swoop in and save you if someone gives you a hard time. It was just like, this is a freaking school environment, and if anyone's an asshole, we're going to deal with it, because this is customer service. Um, but that feeling that, you know, we're going to go save anybody, I think is something that we all have to be really careful about. So
Yeah, I think, like you said, it was a risk that we took, and it could have gone totally
right.
south, where, you know, I could have maybe, you know, because that same student had a very bad experience in high school.
Mm.
From, you know, the mom came and talked to me, and she thanked me for giving him that job, and I said, you know, no, it's part of being here in the college. You know, he applied, I needed a student worker, hired him. It's nothing, you know, that I did out of the ordinary. And in reality, we wouldn't get that many applications of student workers, or their availability that were open. And he was, you know, very available. His classes were in the evening, so it really helped me out. And the mom just coming in and being very, thanking me for being empathetic for hiring her son. And it was just like, no, it's all about, you know, he's a student. I'm hiring him because,
So
and not because, but, you know, it could have been a bad experience, where the same one he had in high school, and I would have got hurt, maybe hurt him more.
mhm.
Um, but, you know, thank God, like you said, it was a risk we took, and it turned out, you know, to be in our favor, and in that student's favor.
Yeah, so that's another that's another way I think that I can push back on some of this, because I don't know, it almost sounds like when we're talking about hiring practices, and you're wanting to work towards a more inclusive, more diverse way to hire. And some of the conversation goes around, well, if we hire this one, you know, then we can pat ourselves on the back. So there's that. And then there's the idea that, oh, it's going to be risky if we hire so many Black people. Like, we can't do that, because everyone will raise a fuss, and there will be riots in the street if we hire, you know, one more Latina to work in the history department or whatever. So we need to be able to keep having these conversations even when they're uncomfortable. And so if you're saying, this is a risk that we took, was it though? Because she was the only student available. So it was like, you did what you had to do. And then you were just like, I'm going to keep an eye on this, because this community, this rural America community, may cause problems for our campus. And so that's sort of like the balance. And so I don't know, Richard, if you wanted to comment. Okay, you turn your camera off. I'm going to move on.
But I think it really, I think not trying to save people, but when you really get to know that person, you really like connect with them, and I had it, from Mexico, an experience. This person did shows for that. She actually helped my daughter in her quinceañera, um, her dance,
Mm.
and many people took it, because in a ranch, and you talk about Mexico, they really exposed themselves by doing these shows. And she showed up to the quinceañera. She was welcomed by me because she did a service for me. I invited her and her friends, and they showed up dressed up. And some people took it, like they didn't know how to react to it. Other people kind of laughed at it, and other people just accepted it. But for me, they were my my I had invited them. I was gonna take care of them, like because I had invited them to my daughter's quinceañera. And Jorge walking around with them in El Pueblo over there, because he was helping him take him to the doctor. Georgie, there was another situation, but when me and my husband, we start talking about this person more intimately, of everything, that he's such a good son. He worked over here in the United States, would send money to his mom, and helped his mom raise all his siblings. And his mom was very ill. Like the kind of son he was, not just working in the fields, but doing other things to help his mom. The humanization
Mm-hmm.
of that person. And my husband, a total, Zacateca Hispanic person, but not machista. Because I think that's one of the things I think I've learned from my husband, that he's not a machismo man, and has really opened up himself to accepting a lot of things that I think when he was young he would have never thought. Being married now to me, that he has really opened up, and accepting that person as our friend. We still see him, and so not being afraid of getting to know them more as a human. And I think that's the hard part. I think not everybody has that ability to get to know somebody personally,
Mm-hmm.
and change our perspective on them. And I think that's why sometimes, and I don't even know if maybe other people would get to know them, they would still feel the same.
Well, I think it's the same conversation we have around race. It's the same sort of conversation we have around race, because obviously people who do drag, all races, right?
Yeah.
That part doesn't matter. It's the humanization. And we're talking about drag, but I'm going to mention trans women again, and the kind of violence that they encounter because they're being dehumanized. It's like, this is not a person, this is not a real woman, so I'm allowed to be violent with this person, and they're at risk. So this idea that there are men walking around who are part of drag community, and it's like, oh well, why, that's so weird, why are you doing that, and why do you need to do it? And it's like, well, why do you drink beer and watch football? Like, do you want to be criticized for doing that? Do you, if you wear a jersey every Sunday all during football season, do you want people to treat you like you're worth less because you have to wear that jersey every week and be attached to a sports team? Like, it could be anything. It could be we can just decide. You can just decide right now that anyone with green eyes is unacceptable. Like, it's that, that whole study about the different colored eyes and how little kids reacted to that. Any little thing that you can decide that makes people less than human. I mean, that's what we do as human beings. We're constantly trying to figure each other out. But then as a society, you're deciding that is not acceptable. And so it takes so much longer for people to see this is a human being and it's none of my business. And why don't I just be friends with them?
Yeah.
And it's so amazing that you can start having that conversation with people because of this, right? The transformation is not just makeup and wig and costume for me, the performer. It's also the impact I'm having on other people. On other people. And kids, they could care less. I'm thinking of there was a library, I don't know if it was on a show or just like a story where like once a week they would have I forgot the person's name, but they would come in dressed in drag and they would read stories and the kids loved it. You know, it was like, oh, look at this amazing person. She's so bubbly and entertaining. And it was like the kids didn't care. Why do adults care so much? It's just crazy. Okay. So we're going to move into a little bit more of like the privilege idea, why this intersection can cause problems for people. So if you benefit, this is Jersey, Ado's partner. If you benefit from being masculine, white, and documented, and now you have gay marriage, it's almost like you're set. Okay. So to me, it's almost like if you can pass as a straight white man, you're going to be fine. And so now that you can get married, they're saying, you guys are set. Like, we still have to fight the fight. We still have to battle based on our race, our skin color, and then we still have to battle on our language barriers, and we still have to battle because we're undocumented.
It's crazy because just an hour ago, that's what I told my son. I told George, you have half of your battle won because you look white, you're tall, and you're a man. Because we were talking about, we just finished his application for his UC housing, and I was telling him that I was going to participate in your book reading and what my chapter was about and some of the book stuff and the part that I came out with him, I told him, George, you know, you have half of your battle won in this society because of how you look.
Yeah.
You're a 6'4" man, young man that looks white. You're Hispanic, but you look white, and you're a man. So half of your battle is won.
Mm-hmm.
You can't imagine, you know, how privileged. And I told him, you know, like for me, a lot of, you know, I told him it's strange because, you know, when I'm with students, many of them think, you know, first is like Hispanic people think I look white, and I don't feel that way. Right. You know, but they were like, oh my God, we thought you were a white person, or, you know, you didn't speak Spanish. I told them, really? Oh, but I told George, when I go to conferences or other areas, I totally feel Mexican. I feel out of place.
Yeah,
when
culturally.
I'm with me, white people. I'm sorry, McCrow. No offense, but you know, I feel so out of place.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I don't fit in. I told him I don't know if it's the way I was just raised. I'm still trying to fight my own battles of you know, you always question yourself. Am I smart enough? Am I you know, do I fit into this culture of education? Even working at a higher education, I still question myself. And like I tell George, when I'm with a lot of people that are not, that I stand out as Hispanic, that's how I feel.
Right.
I don't fit in that culture. Like I feel like I'm that sore thumb out there, or that white hair, that hair in the soup. I just can't help it. And I don't know if I'm ever gonna be able to feel differently. And I had an amazing opportunity to like work with McCrow for almost 12 years. We worked together, and he would always encourage me. And you know, he really, I thank him for pushing me to get my associates, my bachelor's, because he believed in me. And I that's one of the main things when I talk to people. I tell them, you just need someone to believe in you, someone to tell you that you're smart, that you could do it. And I had those people around me. I had great bosses that allowed me and looked at me and looked at my, you know, that I could do it, and pushed me, encouraged me, gave me the opportunity to grow. And never thought I would get a master's, and and I did, because there were people like McCrow that believed and saw more in me than just a secretary, that I had more potential. And I feel like that's the kind of person I want to be. I went into counseling to do that, to empower students. I'm like hungry to be out there and be a counselor. I'm sorry, Bakersfield College, I'm a manager, but I want to be a counselor. I want to work and empower students to believe in themselves at an early age, and not wait till they're my age, for almost 48, to start building that resilience to feel different and empowered. Start early on.
But this is why this comment, I mean, it resonates with us because we have these kinds of experiences. And then, like we were saying about humanizing people, we had opportunities, like you're describing an opportunity that you had, like you were in the right place, the right time with the right person. Whereas if you are masculine, white, or white passing undocumented, and you're able to get married because you look the way that you do, then that is the opportunity. They're just like being handed to you. You don't have to do anything except exist. You're just existing in this space and you're being handed things. So, there's someone like these two who are constantly having to think about, how they're being looked at because of the color of their skin, how they're being looked at if they're gay, how are they being looked at when they're in drag, and then how are they being looked at or considered because they're undocumented. So there's just like that constant battle. I can imagine how exhausting it is. And we have talked about this in terms of race. But right now there's like all these things intersecting just for like these two people, all at once, making it extremely difficult for them to survive. And then here they are, like shouting to the off the rooftops to the mountaintops that this is who I am, and I'm going to go compete in a public space, and I'm going to tell you all that I'm undocumented and that I'm in drag. So it's like this,
And make you uncomfortable, because that's like what he did in
yeah,
his
the show that
performance.
he put on, the performance that he put on.
You were forced to see it. You were forced, for all those people that avoided it for so long. No, you're going to sit there and watch it, because you're watching me and you have nowhere to go. I have you here in this place. And you heard my poem. Now you're going to see the background of the pictures he put out there, humanizing, what undocumented is. And like McCrow kind of, he spoiled the ending of it. No offense, McCrow. But, yeah, we expected a different ending, with that standing ovation, like, nobody else got it.
Well, do you think that is a little bit of, and I'm going to use the word privilege, in the spaces that we're living in now, in the way that our lives have turned out right now? There's a lot of ways that we have privilege. And we've also always experienced, probably through a lot of TV and movies, that the underdog is going to make it, that there's going to be like this big uprising at the end and everybody's going to celebrate. So what we're talking about, for people who haven't read the chapter, is the 2020 Miss Gay America beauty pageant. And so they're there, and Sicaria is competing, performing and competing because he could not get into the RuPaul competition because he's undocumented. That's what the word from the chapter is. And this was the only other way to do that. So it's like Miss America. So there are representatives from all the states. And it's been happening for some decades now. It's not
1972.
Yeah. So it's been around a while. So this was in 2020. And Paola Ramos, after meeting him in Arizona, said, can we do a short documentary? And so he said yes. And this is where the chapter came from, right? She traveled with him, watched the show, that's why we know that there was a standing ovation after this, dramatic, controversial, maybe, performance where there's a slideshow or videos of different ways in which undocumented people have to live their lives, including some footage from like detention centers and things like that in 2020. So, the standing ovations and her description of the people around and just like how captivating the performance was. And then at the end, the way the chapter closes out is saying, you know what, real life dictates this ending. Like we're hoping that when someone is deserving of a standing ovation and they're moving, thousands of people in a theater in a competition, that they get to move forward, that they get praise and they get prizes and they get recognition and they get to move forward. But the reality is that it's still drag and it's still an undocumented Latinx man. So he doesn't win. He doesn't make it in the top 10, doesn't get to move on. And that was it. Like that was the end of that journey. Well, in 2020, who knows what's going on now, but real life.
Almost frozen. In the chapter, like it left you like frozen at the end because it was like just a sad ending and there goes the chapter, like no more explanation, no more
right.
What happened afterwards to Aldo, like what was his reaction to all those, like McCrow put it out there, when they were even questioning his ability to be a participant because of his DACA status, the demeaning words that they were calling him. And I don't know, but being Hispanic, being a woman, having gone through maybe interviews that, I kind of in a way related to Aldo in a way, because in real life, not everything goes like we would think, regardless of the standing ovation, regardless, the people that decide the ending have other thoughts, have other minds, have other mindsets, and like you said, not even moving into the top 10.
Yeah.
Not even that opportunity. For me, it would have been at least make it to the top 10, but not even moving to the top 10. But I don't know for yourself. I feel, we've known each other, and I know you've also gone to the same thing I've gone through, being Hispanic woman, and there's always why you're not good for that position.
Yes. So this is like a mini version for the country, maybe, to kind of consider that when we talk about the ways in which people encounter obstacles based on race and gender anywhere and everywhere they go. Yes. And this is just one more thing. This is just one more thing where, yes, it's about race. Like, that's why when we started this whole thing over a year ago, the first book that we did was So You Want to Talk About Race. And one of the chapters was called, Is It Always About Race? And the answer, of course, is yes. It is always going to be about race because of the way the caste system in America is built. We're always bringing it back to caste. The way that people believe that race and gender make people less than, that is intertwined in the systems that we have built in this country. So even though we were very disappointed, we were not fucking surprised. And that's the worst part, is that we were not surprised that he didn't even move on to the next. Why did we know that and should have expected that? Because opportunities are not given to people who look like him. Even in a Miss Gay America beauty pageant, right? Even in this space where it could have been anybody. There were only, what did they say, like 6 people that were probably not white?
Yeah.
None of them are going to make it for, like, we just know. And that's the heartache. That's the, people want to say microaggressions, but that's a huge, it's a huge way to say you are not wanted here. You don't belong. Great. Standing ovation for all of your hard work and dedication. It's time for you to go home.
And it's worse when you are going through like even inclusion. Like inclusion is a big thing right now. We're having talks, we're presentations, but even the people that are representing inclusion doesn't represent inclusion.
Right.
That's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
You can't talk about inclusion and not be represented by it. When you have the people out there, when you see the picture of who the people are talking about inclusion, and then they say, oh, but yeah, we're an inclusive institution or in an inclusive place or an inclusive, no, you're not.
That's why I said, we're having this conversation because we're reading this book, and so we're talking about what's in the chapter. But I wanted to be clear, like, we do not have this experience, and maybe there's some of these things we shouldn't even be discussing, but we're putting this out there because we want to keep having the conversation. And as dumb as I feel having part of this conversation, because I can't speak to more of it, I can only speak to what I read and what I've seen in my own personal, very, very limited experience. It's still more than a lot of people are even willing to talk about. So I'm glad that we're able to at least say these are the things that we've seen in our limited experiences, and hopefully people want to read the book and learn more about what's going on across the United States. Is one of the things I love about this book, is that it's like different parts of the U.S. and there are these kinds of problems everywhere. Okay, we're at the top of the hour. I'm going to pull up next week's chapter. Do you have any parting words for this chapter?
Well, I just want on this particular chapter, and it's the theme that we keep seeing over and over again, and that is even when we talked about Afro-Latino, when that additional undocumented, it's sort of that, well, who's fighting for us? Who's fighting for this segment of this population? Same thing here is who's fighting for us? And I think that Otto brought it forward, and that the power in which he brought it forward, and then still to be ignored by his community. And that's the part that theme that keeps playing over and over again. The marginalized are even further pushed to the margins for these extra levels of, I don't even know what the word is, but that's what we're seeing is people get pushed further and further to the margins. And it just, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, I think the sad part, like Letty said, at the end, it just puts the less that people are able to humanize, drag queens or male transgenders that are more at risk, because we already know that women, are at risk for, violence and everything. Well, that section of the population is even more at risk because they're more dehumanized than even women. So if we could just move, be more open-minded and be able to start at a very young age, being able to talk comfortably about it and educate ourselves, I don't know if we could change, I think I've always said, I think everything starts from home. We can't let, every time I hear people say, oh, teachers have to educate our children. No, parents need to educate them first at home. And then school comes forward, it's like another a layer on it. But the foundation starts at home.
Well, right now, obviously, we want to keep having these conversations. And in California, maybe it's a little easier for us because our governor is not trying to, write into law these different things where teachers can't even talk about. We're going to ban all these books because there might be a gay character, or we're not going to talk about race because, oh my God, the kids, they're going to be so confused. And it's like, oh my gosh, just all the different ways that we're going to try to dehumanize people and change the way that we teach history and leave out like like all of the important people that actually make America, what it is, or the good parts that have been created over the last few centuries. It's like we are also that's another set. To me, we're privileged in that sense also, because we're free to have these conversations. No one's going to be knocking at any of our doors saying you're not supposed to be talking about that in public. And I mean, if we're in Florida, I think I'd be having a problem with that, because we want to be marching in the streets all the time. Anyway, okay. Next week is going to be the last chapter, Finding Latinx with Angel Mawa. It's going to be good to have her. I haven't seen her in a while. So that's going to be the last chapter. We're going to wrap this up next week. 14 weeks of discussing Finding Latinx. Okay, thank you so much, Raquel, for joining us today, for catching up on the reading and then jumping on Memorial Day. So
thank you. I already peeked into the other chapters. I'm so intrigued. I couldn't stop. I was driving back and I kind of reread the chapter to kind of go over it a little bit again. And I just couldn't stop. We were like almost in McFarland. I'm like, oh my God, am I going to be able to finish this last chapter? It was really, I'm very excited to join you guys next week and also be a part of that conversation, because it, in reality, it also opened my eyes to another layer that we have.
Yeah.
It's like, because I'm Hispanic, and I tell George that's an insult to people when I tell them I can't use the word brown. God forbid.
Right.
God forbid, because look at my skin. Green eyes. I'm white, really light skin. And I offend people, like if I would use the word brown, because it's like, wait a moment.
Right.
Look at yourself in the mirror, woman.
It's like, we didn't mean you. It's that. Yeah. It's that. And colorism. I mean, we can have.
That's all about, fitting, like what I tell you, that brings another layer of like you not fitting in. I think that's what even confuses a person like me at my age, that I still feel that I don't fit in.
Exactly.
I'm not brown enough to be Hispanic. Like, no, you can't call yourself no Mexican from who cares that your family's all from Michoacan. You're too white, woman. But but I'm still, I tell them, when I start speaking in Spanish, my accent of Michoacan comes out and you could really tell.
And for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So then maybe you can join us for that conversation as well. Thank you, Richard, for joining me every week. Thanks again, Raquel. And thank you, everyone who is watching, will watch, whatever. Have a great rest of your memorial.
Right.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for your service, McCrow.